Have you had a tragic event in your life? Have you experienced some sort of tragedy? And how do you write jokes for that? Or should you? That's what we'll be discussing on this episode of Ask the Joke Doctor. Hi, Jerry Corley here, standupcomedyclinic.com with another episode of Ask the Joke Doctor. In this episode, we're going to be discussing another tweet I got. This particular one says, it's from Trevor Dean at Stand Up Diary. Hey, Joke Doctor, how do you write material that comes from a tragic accident event to make it funny, especially if there's a point you're trying to get across through humor? Or is it not worth trying in today's uber-sensitive PC world? Oh, that's a big question, isn't it? Should we do something because of this uber PC world? Well, that has to be taken into consideration no matter what. Pardon me, we are in a hypersensitive environment. We are. That's just the way it is. There's a pendulum swing right now, and right now everybody's super hyper. Everybody's leaping to look for reasons to sort of blame you for something. I posted something on Facebook about Amy Schumer stealing jokes, and I said there were like 5 women, prestigious, successful comedians who had accused her of stealing material. Now, I said in the posting, I said, how many accusers? It took Bill Cosby 52 or 58 accusers before somebody took it seriously. How many is it going to take before somebody takes it seriously that Amy Schumer has been stealing material? Now, when I did that, people leapt to the fact, oh, you're comparing rape to this? I said, no, I'm not comparing rape. You are. I'm comparing accusations. No matter what the accusation, how many does it take before somebody takes it seriously? That was my question, but they wouldn't let it go. They kept attacking and attacking and attacking. So, yes, that particular, and I didn't even say anything about rape. I just said Bill Cosby. And accusations. But they leapt and went that direction. In another instance, one of my students does a joke about dogs. She's a dog owner, she's a dog lover, she opened and built a veterinary business. Her husband's a vet, and she did a joke about training her dog to sit, the beginning, the earlier, easier commands like sit, all the way to the more advanced commands like replace that emotional void. And she was doing a show for this clean comedy competition. Basically what it was is it was a subterfuge as a clean comedy competition when it was actually a Christian comedy competition. And the first thing they did was they leapt to the fact that emotional void joke was something about the dog eating her pussy. So that's a dirty joke. You can't do that joke. That's filthy. And it was like, she said nothing about that in the joke, but they decided that, hey, that's where people are now. They're leaping to accusation because that's where the states of their mind are. Everybody's hypersensitive. So you have to make that choice. Now, the first thing I would say with your question, Trevor, is depends on the event. Is it a personal event or is it a public tragedy? Like the Bill Cosby thing is a public tragedy. The Amy Schumer accusation is a public tragedy. If my mom dies, that's a personal tragedy. And I can deal with that and talk about that, make jokes about that all I want, because the audience doesn't have an emotional connection to my material necessarily. They all have experienced death at some level. Most of them have experienced death either of a friend or a family member or something like that. But when I'm talking about my personal interaction with my mom dying, my feeling when my mom dies, and I do a whole bit about my mother dying and what I went through and how I recovered, and I get a great laugh out of it, but I allow the audience to go with me on that journey to a state where I get emotional, or I get a bit misty, and then I hit them with the punchline, boom, and because I did allow it to go into sort of the dramatic turn of real emotion happening, when I do hit the punchline, they're like excited because it was so unexpected. They're like, oh, you fucker, you got us. You had us all concerned that you were, oh, is it gonna be okay? And then boom, punchline. So yeah, you can go there. I have another comedian who's gay, and he talks about his mother dying. And true story, he's like, so my mother died. And he prefaced earlier that his mother was not happy when he came out of the closet. She was like blaming him for coming out of the closet. That, oh, you choose to do this abomination sort of thing, that kind of person. And so she goes, well, the bad news is my mother is dead. The good news is there's one less person in the world that calls me a fucking faggot. So a great joke from his point of view. And it's about his personal tragedy. And he says something that could be hypersensitive. I mean, people might be coming down on me for just saying fucking faggot. It wasn't me saying it. I was doing it as him saying it. So, but again, they will leap and call me wrong for saying that. But it's just the words. It's not the words. It's the heart behind the words. And since it's his personal tragedy, he can say that. But you'll notice whether it's news people, blog people, whatever, they're treading lightly. They're walking on eggshells not to offend. And it does have an impact on your career, I hate to say. Norm Macdonald made some comments on Roseanne Barr and also on Louis C.K. During an interview. And as a result, he got canceled from his appearance on The Tonight Show on NBC. So I think it was The Tonight Show on NBC, or no, I think it was CBS, Stephen Colbert. He got canceled from that appearance because of those comments. Now, keep in mind, there's a lot of politics going on around. Leslie Moonves, the president of CBS, stepped down because of sexual harassment allegations. He's now, basically defending people because of CK on a sexual harassment issue and Roseanne on a racist issue. So everybody's hypersensitive, and CBS said it wouldn't be wise to have Norm Macdonald on there right now because he sounds like he's a loose cannon and he can't control himself as to what he says. Now, comics, by their nature, don't give a shit. We want to talk about stuff. We want to talk about stuff against the status quo. Do you know what I'm saying? We want to root against it. We want to go against the grain. We want to break the mold. I mean, Lenny Bruce didn't get arrested all those times saying what he said and getting arrested for profanity and being disgusting in public or whatever the charges were back then. He didn't get arrested so that we could just watch what we say. We love to say what we want to say. In the clubs, we can do that. When we're attached to a brand, we have to be careful. And what do I mean when I say attached to a brand? If you're doing a show for NBC or CBS or ABC or Fox or any of the other branded networks, and you're attached to that brand by being on one of their shows, and you say something that's abhorrently or could be viewed as abhorrently wrong, then where people could actually boycott your sponsors and reduce the money that's coming into the network, then you could get booted from that network. It's as simple as that. If you are attached to some sort of brand, watch your mouth. Watch what you say. If you're in the clubs, say what you want. If you have a Netflix special, I think you get away with a lot more on Netflix because people can choose to watch or not. And Netflix is not sponsored. Netflix is subscription. You can get away with a lot more on HBO. HBO is subscription. They're not beholden to any of these corporate sponsors. So there's a difference. You got to use your head. And a lot of comics don't do that. They just say stuff. And then they wonder why it happened. A good case in point is Bill Burr. I love Bill Burr. But Bill Burr's a fucking idiot sometimes. I mean, he doesn't even know he's a sexist. And again, I'll say it again. I love Bill Burr. I think he's brilliant. But he's also stupid because he's so impulsive that he says things that gets him in trouble. And that's kind of what makes Bill Burr so great. But sometimes he does it without thinking. Case in point, he was doing his podcast and he's talking about how one of his sponsors, Sherry's Berries, dropped him. Stopped sponsoring the show. And he was like, I don't even get it. I don't even know why. I don't even know why they've dropped us. Evidently, I was reading some copy. I was reading their copy. And by the way, Sherry's Berries, if you want me to read your copy again, be happy to. I loved reading your copy. I'm happy to do it. He's sort of patronizing after the fact, the sponsor, right? And I'm happy to do it. I love reading your copy, because you want the sponsors back. Yeah, you want the money. The money is important to continue the podcast because these things cost money to produce. But he doesn't even realize, and he keeps going, and he's saying, but at the same time, Sherry's Berries knows, I did a joke, and the joke was, reading the copy, I have this black comic on, and he's the guest on the show, and I'm reading the copy about chocolate-covered strawberries, and I do a joke about the KKK. And I don't know, maybe they thought it was offensive. Maybe they thought it was offensive. Maybe they thought it was offensive. While you're reading the company's copy, you're in their commercial, and you say something as insensitive as that, while in their commercial. You could have referred to the chocolate-covered strawberries later on, outside of their commercial, and that probably would have been fine, because now you're Bill Burr. But when you're Bill Burr representing Sherry's Berries, you got to watch what you say. You're representing their product. And not to know this is absurd. If you're representing somebody's product, be careful what you say. Do the best to represent their product. It's like if you're playing a venue, don't trash the venue. They're the ones writing your check. Don't bite the hand that feeds you. Do you know what I'm saying? It's that simple. But here's the deal with Bill Burr. He goes on further. What I loved about it, his wife shows up into the studio, and she sits down. He's talking to her. He says, "I don't know why they dropped Bill Burr." And he says, maybe Sherry's Berries needs to get some courage. Grow a dick and some balls so they can have some courage. What he doesn't even realize is saying growing a dick and balls to have courage means you have to have a dick and balls to have courage. Guy doesn't even know he's saying something sexist. Now, that being said, once again, I love the fact that Bill Burr takes on the status quo. Bill Burr has no filter. Bill Burr is spontaneous and impulsive. But at some point, you have to start thinking, especially in the environment we're in. Practice your shit, get up there on stage, and then you can be spontaneous. You can practice in a club and be as spontaneous as you want, but as soon as you're attached to a brand, that's when you really have to be careful. Now, you can lose the audience. Now, what is interesting now is to watch Bill Burr talk about his journey of trying to do this #MeToo material while being a sexist. That's going to be a tough nut to crack, And again, I'm going to be showing up at that special to see how he gets through it, to watch how he does it, because he's amazing, right? So at the same time, just because I like the guy doesn't mean I can't disagree with him or find the faults. I have plenty of my own faults. I mean, shit, I've got Samsonite of luggage that are my faults. So I'm not saying I'm faultless. I'm saying that Bill Burr, here's some examples for you to observe, to learn from. These are the mistakes we all make. We all say some dumb things and get caught in trouble. But when you're representing a brand, you have to be super careful. While you're on stage, you can experiment a little more. But it's, again, when Bill Burr gets up there and he's a sexist, and it's clear he's a sexist, and it's not just that Sherry's Berries thing, it's a lot of things that nail him down as being a bit of a sexist. Now, and you're going to try to do some #MeToo bit against women's empowerment, you're going to get shot down, especially in today's environment. So you have to be aware of it. So when you're doing a personal tragedy, ask yourself, does it relate? Odds are, like I said earlier, my mom died. Most people have had some sort of death in their life or have experienced it, especially, comedy clubs, usually 21 and over to get in. Most people by this point have experienced some level of death. So you have to be careful. Sometimes you can do something and the audience groans, right? What I like to do, especially if I have a strong point of view about this subject matter, is instead of backing off of it, is I double down. I'll get on it, and I do this thing about, I do this whole bit about, priests and sexual abuse and priests. And once in a while, most of the times it gets a laugh, but once in a while I get really big groans, especially in a heavily Catholic area, right? I'll get some groans, and I'll go, really? Over $1 billion in settlements, and I'm the bad guy? Really? So that's the way you want to play this? So you're coming after me, the messenger, when basically the church is the guy who's fucking the kids, not me. And it's like, once you double down like that, you'll see the audience digs it, because now you're calling them out by calling out the simple truth of the situation, rather than still just trying to do your jokes. You're just being pure and honest at that point. So in the personal tragedy, does it relate? That's important, because the audience has to relate to something. If they don't relate to the specific event, maybe they will relate to the emotion attached to the event, because everybody experiences emotion. And if it's a public tragedy, if you're going to do a public tragedy, Bill Burr can take on these issues he takes on because he's got chops. He's a pro. He's been doing this for 27 years. So he's played a lot of venues. He's so fast on his feet. So he can deal with doing an issue that gets groans, that gets pushback from the audience, and continue to push through, because he's got chops. You got to make sure you have confidence and an unwavering sense of self up there. Let me say that again. You've got to develop an unwavering sense of self on the stage to take on controversial issues like this. And if you're gonna, I'm not even sure the issue you're mentioning, but I'm trying to just give you an overview, which is probably why this video is very wordy, is because I don't know the specific incident you're talking about. So if it's a public tragedy, you're dealing like the Boston bombing, you're dealing with 9/11, you're dealing with the shooting in Parkland, Florida, you're dealing with that sort of thing. That kind of tragedy requires chops for you to navigate through that. You can do some little asides to that. Like in the Parkland tragedy, I did a joke like, Donald Trump said he would have gone in there after the gunman even if he wasn't armed. I go, yeah, you could cut a bitch with some bone spurs. That is taking on that personal tragedy, or that public tragedy rather, and doing a joke about it without talking about the profound nature of gun control necessarily. Now, I've taken on gun control issues in Montana and done it in a fun way, and to where they're laughing and I'm laughing at the fact that we disagree on something, but we don't hate each other for it. You see what I'm saying? So there's a way to approach this. George Carlin said, when you're taking on issues like this and you have a strong point of view, one way to get around it, take the shit that drives you crazy, make it funny, is to raise the bridge. And what he means is raise the eyebrows. If you raise your eyebrows when you're talking about certain issues, you're not judging, you're trying to figure it out, you're confused, you're alarmed, it doesn't make any sense to you. It doesn't make sense. Somebody explain this to me. Which, by the way, again, I'll mention Bill Burr, because he takes on a lot of these issues, does this really well, because the whole thing is about, I don't get it, somebody explain it to me. However, there are sometimes you take on issues, if you're going to take on issues, you have to be sure that it fits with your persona. Is it a part of you, or is it just coming out of left field because suddenly you want to just make a statement on stage? If you're doing jokes and all of a sudden you want to make a statement, it just sounds like you're having a bit of a rant fest, and you're not really doing stuff that's consistent with your character or your stage persona, if you will. You got to ask yourself if it fits, and have some discipline enough to decide whether or not you're going to keep that material in the act, or whether you're going to stay with your quirky, weird stuff. Does that make sense? Remember, we are in blame mode right now. And so the audience is looking for reasons to jump on us for certain things. There's been now at least one occasion, maybe two occasions, one occasion where somebody wanted to fight me at the Comedy Store for doing some jokes. And then another occasion, some guy got mad at me and approached me outside the club because he didn't appreciate my viewpoint on society. So we are in a blame mode, but it's not going to stop me from doing what I'm doing, and I hope it doesn't stop you either. Also, tread lightly. Don't accuse. Don't furrow the brow and accuse people. Keep your eyebrows up and talk about the absurdity of the idea, how it doesn't make any sense, rather than trying to accuse anybody in the audience. It's not necessarily the words you use, it's the heart behind it. The beauty of being able to talk about something live as opposed to having it in a written word is the audience has a harder time seeing your sarcasm or the subtle emotional points of view in a written word, where live they can hear the nuances and inflections in your voice and get to understand where you're coming from. And you can also correct yourself and point out to the audience that you're being absurd about a specific situation and get away with it a little more. But tragic events are not easy to talk about. And here's another thing. It sounds kind of dumb, but do you even know what you're saying? Do you have your facts straight? And this is a key point. You got to make sure you have the facts. If you're just coming up with stuff that's some bizarre conspiracy theory or something that's not based on anything except your emotions, and it has no basis in realness or authenticity, then the audience isn't going to buy it. A lot of people get up there, say something, makes no sense at all, and we're like, we're supposed to believe that? Doesn't make any sense, you know? Case in point, I'll bring up Bill Burr again, because I watch a lot of Bill Burr. He was doing a show, one of his specials in Nashville. I don't know if you guys saw this. It just wasn't Bill Burr to me. I was like, what the hell, right? He was wearing a cowboy shirt and cowboy boots. You know, people basically saw the audience saw it as the audience. You're trying to patronize the audience, right, by trying to dress Western or something like that, or just Southern or whatever, dress like them. You know, you're Boston Bill Burr. They're not looking for, you know, Western Bill Burr. They're looking for Boston Bill Burr. And on top of that, he did this whole bit about Stalin versus Hitler, and how Stalin was worse than Hitler because Hitler only killed 6 million people and Stalin killed 58 million people, which is an incorrect fact. You know, Hitler killed up to 58 million non-combatants, you know, and that's not even including the war. So, you know, to say, and you know, Stalin didn't try to wipe out an entire segment of people. Like, you know, he tried to wipe out the Jews. And so Stalin didn't do that. Hitler did. So his facts were wrong, and he went on for 20 minutes on this whole bit of incorrect facts. So you can't do that. You gotta know what you're talking about, and you've got to have the facts behind it. So that's what I would suggest in order for you to do that. So get your facts straight, and I hope this helped. I know this was a long video, but again, when you hit me up with that situation and I don't know the specifics of the tragedy you're talking about, then it's I kind of had to give it a broad concept and cover everything in there and paint it a little bit with a broad brush. I hope you don't mind. By the way, if you have any questions you would like me to answer, I'd be happy to do it. Visit me on Twitter. My handle is @JokeDoctor. And you can ask me the question, and if you have room, hashtag it with Ask the Joke Doctor, and I'll be happy to put a video together just like this one, just a little shorter than this one for you guys. And if you like what you're seeing on my channel here, be sure to hit that subscribe button. I am on my way to 10,000 subscribers. That's a milestone. I know it's a minuscule number compared to a lot of these guys who are influencers on YouTube, but that's not what I'm shooting for. I'm just shooting for helping as many people like yourselves as I can with information based on my experience in the comedy field, which is now going on 30 years myself. So once again, I hope you're enjoying this, and I hope this brought value to your day. Take care. Bye-bye.